Welcome to Life Happened, the place where people send in their very personal life stories for us to share with you. You can make a huge difference in their lives by sharing your feelings and advice for them in the comments below. My name is Stella, your host, and this story is from Olivia. Dear Stella, 2 summers ago, my father decided it would be best if everyone in our nuclear family moved southerly from St. Louis, Missouri to Southwest Missouri. My mother at first thought it would be a nice change of scenery, as we'd been to this particular part of Missouri a few times. My brother wasn't fond of the idea since he'd have to leave all of his friends behind for no particular reason. Note: yes, leaving one's school and friends can be difficult for young people. Mind you, my father is retired and my mother is unemployed, hence the reason to move. The people there are incredibly friendly, and the housing market is decently inexpensive compared to the city or the county. Since moving in, we realized that not only is the house as expensive as our previous one, it also has a crippling number of flaws, which were overlooked by inspectors. Regardless, thousands of extra dollars were dumped into this house to make repairs, and almost every day presented a new problem. My father pretended to be oblivious to it all, trying to make the best of the bad situation he had put us in. It was truly eye-opening for me seeing how kind everyone was around there. I started college after we got as settled in as we could. I was going to school for culinary arts, but there was one issue. Neither of my parents ever helped me get my driver's license. I was 18 at the time, and I was teased and made fun of for legally being able to drive, but didn't. Every time I'd ask to drive, I'd be told, "Next time." Regardless, my father drove me to and from school and stopped by a local greasy restaurant nearly every day to eat a breakfast so high in cholesterol that it would kill a horse. Note: many times it can be difficult to break one's bad habits. The thing I remember most about the truck he drove me in was the stench of cigarettes. I also recall him telling me how proud he was to be 60 years old and so healthy. My father is the kind of person to only look out for himself if someone upset him. My mother would always scream and yell at him, and he made no effort to alleviate the situation. He taunted her, mocked her, and stormed off like a kid in a playground. Almost a year had passed, and tragedy struck. My father had a stroke. After rushing him to the hospital, he spent nearly a month there, as my brother, mother, and I were left to deal with the house, among other things. Given that this was in the middle of COVID, restrictions on visiting were incredibly strict. I cannot blame the hospital for this. The last thing they need is an outbreak within their buildings. My father recovered as well as he could, but was left quite disabled. As soon as my dad left the hospital, after 34 or so days, he begged for cigarettes. I had thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to finally get him to stop smoking, but that was merely a fantasy. Note: this would have been the perfect time to break free of cigarettes. And now may be a good time to click the like button for this story. He got his hands on the cigarettes. It's not like my mother or brother could stop him from being terribly addicted to nicotine. By this point, everyone in my house smoked. My brother and father nearly a pack a day, and my mother a little more than half a pack. My dad is now on a slew of medications and takes about 10 or so different pills daily on top of an insulin shot, as we found out that he also had developed type 2 diabetes because of his poor dietary choices. His attitude grew worse and worse as time went on because my mother would taunt him by calling him derogatory names. He only made things worse by doing the same exact thing. It seems to me that every time my parents have an argument, it always comes to a boil, but never quite boils over. It's the same exact thing every time. I volunteered to take my walks as he didn't make a single effort to try to get better. He went back to drinking and smoking every night without any sort of motivation to recover. He also kept eating meals which were incredibly bad for him. And it didn't help that my mother hardly wanted to cook and blew up at me whenever I cooked. Note: the person must want to change his or her own bad habits. It can be daunting on the family. His memory and perception of time were greatly skewed. At times, I'd hear my father in the kitchen at 4 a.m. trying to make a pot of coffee. I'd have to tell him to go back to bed before he woke up my mother and had another screaming match. Nearly another year rolled by, and my father had another stroke. He has heart problems that cause his heartbeat to be irregular, so he recently spent another week in the hospital. Now that he's home, he does even less, and his speech is even more incoherent. Still, he refuses to quit smoking, even though he hardly has a few years left in him. My mother and brother still smoke and have made no effort to quit either. The few times they've talked about quitting were sadly nothing more than beer talk. I'm still the only person in my home that isn't addicted to smoking cigarettes. Note, good for you, Olivia. All of this stress always gets me thinking about things. My father used to tease and make fun of me when I was younger about my weight, the size of my head, and my hair. My mother, however, would hit me, yell at me, and berate me all the time. Anytime I'd ask for help with something, they'd always say, ask your mom or ask your dad, to get me out of their hair. All my life, I have felt a burden to both of them, yet I can't help but pity them. Every opportunity I have to get away from this house, and the opportunities are few and far between, granted, I take them. Am I wrong for wanting to move out given the state that my dad is in? Thank you, Olivia, for writing to us. And even though I am not a relationship expert nor have a degree in psychology, I will now share my thoughts and opinions about Olivia's story. I am so sorry that you have led a difficult life with your parents' and brother's addictions, being berated by your parents, and not being taken seriously regarding your efforts to make your home a happy one and smoke-free. The first thing I think of is the secondhand smoke which you are breathing in. This is not healthy for you or anyone else. I think we can all certainly understand why you are considering moving out to your own place after all you have endured. Sometimes it can be exceptionally difficult to change the bad habits of others. Your parents and brother must want to stop their smoking and bad meal choices on their own, even though you have tried diligently and honorably to get them to quit and eat healthier. It's just not working. You have performed well and lovingly for your family, but they take no heed. Sometimes love and caring just aren't enough. How sad is that? Since it sounds as though you aren't happy in your current situation, I would think you would want to move out and be on your own. Even then, you could still certainly try convincing your family to break their bad habits, and at least you wouldn't be in the thick of things. Remember that individuals are responsible for their own actions. You have tried admirably, but to no avail, about your family's living situation, including how your parents quarrel. You can't change that also, only they can. You can certainly try to ease the situation, but your parents must deal with their relationship themselves, and perhaps seek help for them. And I am certain it is quite difficult to watch them arguing. Olivia, you appear to be a wonderfully sweet, kind, and loving person who deserves every happiness in the world. Perhaps you will find some solutions to your situation by reading the opinions and suggestions of others who will comment below. We wish you all the best, and thank you again for sharing your story with us. Here are 2 quotes for you regarding Olivia's story today. The first one is, quote, stay away from addictions in life, or addictions will take you away from life, unquote. That's from the book of Wealth of Words, and the second one is, quote, the only proper way to eliminate bad habits is to replace them with good ones, unquote, by Jerome Hines. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed listening to Olivia's story today. So perhaps you may have a comment, opinion, question, or answer to Olivia's story. If so, we would like to hear from you. And you can read other people's comments and opinions below relating to this letter. And remember that by liking and subscribing to this channel, you will hear me read letters every week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which people send us about issues they are dealing with in their lives. These are real-life personal stories and people's everyday experiences. And don't forget, if you have a personal story or issue which you would like to share with us, please send us an email using the email provided in the description box below. We would be very happy to hear from you. We thank you for joining us here today, where life happens. See you next time, and have a wonderful day.